Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Wings Podcast. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri. On today's show, we will meet Chinmay Agnihotri, a birder, a wildlife photographer, and a software engineer, all rolled into one. Working with a startup, he dreams of owning one day the entire software production process from design to delivery. Growing up watching Nat Geo, Animal Planet, and Discovery channels, Chinmay has built a personal library with a collection ranging from English literature, fiction, natural history, geopolitics, and economics. Building practical skills and gaining work experience is my current focus, he says. Welcome, Chinmay, to this episode of Wings Podcast.
Thank you so much. This is a podcast which I often enjoy as I get to hear about people of my own age doing so many different things and accomplishing so many wonderful achievements in their different endeavors.
Absolutely. And you and your accomplishments, and especially what you are aspiring for, Chinmay, is also something which I think makes me proud, and I'm sure it will make our listeners also very proud. So why don't we begin our conversation on this very interesting note of a beautiful combination of being a birder and a wildlife photographer. So why don't you walk us through this part of Chinmay? How did that happen? How did it get nurtured? How did it unfold?
Sure. So it unfolded in me basically because I was exposed to nature purely via an accident. So my father works at a public sector company. So what happened was when I was in third grade, I got he got transferred to Assam. So naturally, I accompanied him, and in Assam we were in a small town called Sibsagar. So and basically that place we had television connectivity was not much of a thing. So I could not watch any cartoons or so. So whatever little could come on the TV was all I could watch. And so National Geographic, Animal Planet, and Discovery channels, and all those three channels luckily were available. So I used to watch them. And then Assam being the wonderful paradise that it is for people who like wildlife and birds. The vacations and various visits to Kaziranga and in general the other parts of the Northeast basically cultivated and nurtured my interest there. And that is how it began. That is how the journey of looking basically at the different places, exploring what kind of wildlife is present in the region, that began. Photography came in much later when I was a adult and when I was in my engineering. That is when I decided that I wish to document what I am able to see. So that is how the photography journey began.
Chinmay, do you remember what are your earliest memories? If at all you faintly remember where the world of birds attracted you.
I began noticing birds a lot more when I got my very first camera. So before that, I was mostly interested in documenting mammals, as first of all, they were, uh, since mammals are quite large, so they can be easily seen. And most documentaries, like I said, as a kid, I grew up watching on TV, were on mammals, be it tigers, rhinos, and so forth. So birds, when my exposure to ornithology started when my very first bird which I saw. I mean, not the apart from the usual common urban birds like crows, parrots, and all, was a red-vented bulbul. That is what I had seen, and that is how it began in the outskirts of a town called Vadodara, where I had first witnessed, and that is how it began. Then I began observing some other birds whenever I used to go out into the jungle, and then I started reading about those through books. So that is how the whole uh, pursuit of ornithology began.
A few years back, Chinmay, I was exposed to a BBC film series called The Life of Birds uh,
Yeah,
by David Attenborough, which
yeah,
only later on I learned that it's a classic. And
yeah,
incidentally, those couple of episodes were entirely focused on only one bird called the eagle.
yeah,
And David Attenborough actually, uh, through multiple episodes, did present different kinds of eagles that exist in different parts of the world. Of course, I'm not a bird expert, but what fascinated me, especially in that film scene, was some eagles uh, whose natural habitat is the Siberian region, where as we all know, there is cold for many, many, many months, and then there is a few short window of of so-called summer. And beautifully, Mr. Attenborough kind of presented the entire migration journey of these eagles when the season changes from the cold Siberian winter to the warm sub-Saharan Africa, which is many thousands of miles of travel. And of course, with the change of season, with the advent of summer back in Siberia, these kind of eagles would fly back. Fascinating story. But I would like to know from you, because you are a birder and a bird enthusiast. What is your take on this phenomena of migration of birds? Because I know you have photographed many, many birds in different parts of
yeah,
India when they are in migration. So why don't you
yeah.
share with us, how do you look at this beautiful thing called migration of birds?
Sure, sure. So migration is, at its core, what I feel is a evolutionary phenomenon. Just like human beings have evolved from a particular species, say Neanderthals or uh, before that, migration also is some sort of an evolutionary phenomenon in certain species of birds. So from what I'm able to basically see is, since I belong to the state of Gujarat, India, every year in winter we get a lot of migrant birds of prey. We call them raptors. So various raptors come in from the Arctic tundra region of Russia and in Siberia and from Kazakhstan as well. So, and whatever routes they take, they are quite precise, and most of them have this ability to land at the exact same patch or the exact uh, in some circumstances I have witnessed exact same trees which they were at last year.
Oh,
And the information of that route is what I feel is passed down from generation to generation when they migrate in flocks. For example, in Siberian cranes or in, say, blackneck cranes, when the juvenile bird accompanies its parents in a flock. So that is how that information is propagated. And that is how the entire species lives practically, because they have to be on the move every few months for their survival and breeding, of course.
so which are the spots in India where you have actually went and witnessed and observed and photographed these migratory birds?
Yeah, so there's a incredible desert which is known as the Run of Kutch in Gujarat. So that is one of the places where you can get to see, like, the eagles you mentioned. There are several kinds of migratory eagles which come there, and there are, of course, several smaller falcons. Personally, one of my favorites is called the merlin. Merlin is a little falcon coming all the way from Kazakhstan to here. Then there are several wetlands in the country where migratory birds are seen every winter. So there's a very famous wetland called Bharatpur in the state of Rajasthan. That is a national park now. It's called Kevala Devghana National Park. So that is where you get to see various waterbirds, various ducks which migrate. Ducks, basically called waterfowl in ornithology. There are hundreds of species of ducks which basically migrate throughout the year. Some of them stay, like in the state of Gujarat, also where I live. Flamingos, there is a certain flock which is resident throughout the year. So you get to see those various types of birds. The thing about migrant birds is you get to see a lot of behavior. The observational part of ornithology is best experienced during migration. That is because you can just sit at a creek for hours and hours with the binoculars, or even sometimes without it, and just keep observing the activities these birds engage in, be it their feeding, be it preening. Preening is what we call when the bird basically tries to clean its feathers. Then maybe sometimes some courtship displays, or maybe sometimes there is a fight between two birds. So that is what you get to see for hours and hours if you can just sit by a small water body and just peacefully look at those at
But
a
for,
safe distance, of
but,
course.
but for doing this, Chinmay, it would call for tremendous patience and ability to be comfortable with the time slowing down, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Patience is, I feel, I would not say I have cultivated a lot of patience because of this activity which I have pursued, but I would say the converse is true. I have become a lot less impatient because of bird watching.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting thought. You become less impatient.
Yeah, so that is I credit that, I give that personal growth of mine solely that is dedicated to birds,
So
because you have a habit of finding, first of all, finding the species. So certain times I have a particular species in mind that I wish to see this, and when I venture out for hours and hours on a drive, or maybe in a safari, bird watching, or even say wildlife photography as a pursuit, most of the times it is a pursuit in failure. You are most likely not going to get what you have in mind, but it is the satisfaction of search, I would say, which kind of gives you a feeling towards the end when you are exhausted in the evening after walking, and you're still not able to get, but yeah, you saw some beautiful terrain. You basically saw some other species maybe which you didn't have in mind, but yeah, you got to see, and that is how it goes. So uh, it is a it is, I would say that it basically makes you a lot calmer because there is no one else with you. So there is nothing to chit chat about. And in the jungle, in forests, especially in national parks, there is a certain etiquette which has to be maintained with the guards and all. So you have to be quiet. So it really slows down time. It brings down to a halt. You lose the track of time, and especially if you have read about it a lot before going to a particular place, then especially I've seen that I've felt, what I would say seen, but I've felt that it is all that is in your head. You forget about the rest of the world, what is going out outside, and that is how this whole pursuit of mine basically evolved. So from a day, like it used to be a day you go in the morning and come back home in the evening. Then as more holidays used to come, vacations used to come, I used to take longer trips, and that is how it evolved into a, I would say, from just going from observational to documenting it creatively. Now, when I see a bird, I would like to see it doing something. If it is doing something unique, or maybe I see a species which I know is not it. it's not the right time in the conventional sense, but yet that species is still here in the this particular location. So I make it a point to document it, and there have been several instances where I have uh, been able to document different species at different times. So when they are not supposed to be in that particular location, the conventional wisdom is that they probably are not there. So
Any
I found several outliers.
any specific examples of these outliers?
Sure. Um, I live in Ahmedabad, in the state of Gujarat, and close to Ahmedabad there is a wetland called Thol Lake. That's a lake, and in 2018 I had seen a different kind of goose called a greater white-fronted goose, and it has been documented with the forest department officials. And before 2018, that particular species was spotted in 2013. So in 5 years, uh, it was not there, but then suddenly in 2018, something has probably happened which prompted one individual. So it was there in a flock of grey lag geese. So grey lag geese and greater white-fronted goose, those are two species, quite similar from a distance. But it is only when you have some sort of an equipment with you, like a binocular or a good camera with a telephoto lens, that you begin to examine that, oh, this particular, so how I found out was this particular individual looks different. And so when I came home, analyzed the images, that is how I got to know that, oh, this is not your grey lag goose, this is a greater white-fronted goose. So I verified it with a few other ornithologists, and then I sent it to the forest department officials that this is there. So that is how it's fun. Basically, at the end of the day, you get a good feeling that, yeah, I saw something unconventional, I would say, or I found out something. And there is a little bit of a curiosity which arouses you, that why did this particular individual come there. So it that is how I would say it would uh, the entire flow of the game goes, that a certain level of curiosity is definitely required. It is not a hobby for the disinterested, I would say.
It's a hobby for the courageous ones, I should say. I guess it's not just the patience, but the courage to pursue failure and be ready for
Yeah,
it.
to pursue failure.
So beautiful,
Yeah,
so beautifully said.
definitely.
And it's like that karma yogi, right? The concept of karma yogi, where
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
you just do your duty, and
Yeah,
fruits,
you
if at
do,
all have to happen,
and
they will happen. If they don't happen, they don't
yeah,
happen.
everything else takes care of itself. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
So at such a
yeah,
young age, you practically have received the lesson and the wisdom of a Nishkam Karma
yeah.
Yogi, Chinmay. But
Maybe.
how and when did your first camera happen to you? Because that, I know, for a birder and a wildlife photographer, is as good as a breath of fresh air or oxygen.
Yeah. The camera is a very important device if you, I would say, if you truly wish to properly document your pursuits. So my very first, when I started out, was a Sony Handycam, a little small camcorder, and that was in the days of when I was at Assam. So I wanted to basically film every single rhino I was able to see with my eyes. And in Kaziranga, the conservation efforts and all are very commendable, that you can easily see rhinos. So I just wanted to film every single rhino I could see. So that is how uh, the first camera came to be, that my parents bought me a Sony camera, a handy cam. And from there, of course, that kind of photography is also a whole pursuit of learning. It is a play with light. Essentially, at the end of the day, photography is not just pressing the button and taking a picture. At the end of the day, if you wish to creatively document your subjects, you have to learn how light works, not just press a button and put it up on social media. That is not the way uh, it happens. So gradually it evolved. So then when I came back from Assam to Gujarat, then we had little point and shoot cameras. Now those are totally replaced by smartphones. By the way, nobody uses point and shoots anymore. And then engineering, of course, it started with a DSLR. So from DSLR, and then I learned most of my photography. I learned on DSLR, and I followed a few photographers online. Basically, the ones which I admire, the ones whose work I saw and I liked. So I used to ask those people that how to shoot a particular subject, or if they go somewhere, then how they shoot particular subjects, what kind of weather do they shoot in, and that is how it came to be. So it has been a learning journey. I would say photography has ultimately been uh, an experimental learning journey. Every time there would be a wrong setting, or maybe there would be some sort of a blur in the picture, then I would just download the file on my computer and analyze it. And that is how slowly and uh, iteratively pursuing the craft, I would say, that it and still today as well. Like from now I've graduated from, say, a DSLR camera to mirrorless camera, and with that in mind also, I keep on looking at various trends as well. Like the photography, I would say, in India has evolved a lot from not just because of social media, but also the accessibility of cameras so has increased a lot due to smartphones. So you have to keep in mind that static photography is also no longer just the only thing that is trending, even in wildlife. Now people have started making short snippets of videos, which you can see on several social media platforms. We call it reels or shorts or so and so. So that is also an evolutionary journey which has taken place, and I tend to be a part of it. So I wish to do a little bit of video as well in my next trips. So that is how I continue to learn, basically learn from the people whose work you admire.
Beautiful. So, Chinmay, where does one get to see your photography of birds that you have been doing over the years?
I'm quite active on Instagram. So somebody who wishes to see my images can find me at Chinmay_Agnihotri. Pretty simple ID. And I keep uploading my images time to time on Instagram wherever I go. And that is, Instagram is the place for photographers. So I even meet a lot of photographers on Instagram to talk with them to how they shoot particular subjects. And sometimes I also put my photographs in exhibitions. So I submit my photographs in photography contests, and in my state, Gujarat's Kala Academy, my photographs have been selected. And I had also a photo of Merlin, which was the falcon I was talking about uh, earlier. I was also selected in the Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad at and a few other bird images also. So I keep on submitting them in exhibitions which have anything to do with nature theme and environmental habitats and so on.
Wonderful. So, not only you kind of capture these birds in their magical moments, but you also present it to the wider audience, people like us, to see either on your
Yeah,
Instagram platform or through your exhibitions. So,
yeah,
apart from the collections, I guess, of photographs that you have over the years, the other collection which you have been silently building is your personal library of books.
yeah.
How did this bug of reading bit you?
I was a very lousy sports person as a kid.
Uh-huh.
So I never had that kind of inclination before birding and wildlife came into my life. I never had any kind of inclination to pursue sports.
Okay.
So the only other thing I love to do. And of course, it was heavily encouraged by my parents and my school, I would say. My primary school was the habit of reading. So a lot of people can't start their day without tea or coffee. For me, it's either tea or coffee. If I wake up in the morning and I don't have a newspaper, then it becomes a sore point of the day.
Okay.
So that is so reading uh, was quite a it took quite a lot of time to build my personal collection, but I have this habit of uh, being a voracious kind of reader. Even there's a little pamphlet, or I just have this sudden urge, like if there's a pamphlet I see, or if there's a billboard I see, even sometimes it can be a distraction. But my ideal evening, I would say, after everything, all my work is done, is to sit with a book. I'm not that much into watching television or so. So whenever I get the time, I just after my work, I just sit with a good book and I just read. And the good part about reading is that so much, like, a reader lives so many lives. It is often said that you are not just you begin to see the world a little differently with every single book you read, a little differently, just a little bit of difference in how you can see the world. And of course, one other part is that as a kid, of course, we need to develop our communication skills. And for communication skills, uh, whatever language you wish to build your communication skills in, reading is a very pivotal instrument, because I don't think without reading a certain amount of books, or I would say even the newspaper or so, child cannot, this is what I feel, cannot build communication skills. Because uh, if the language has not, you're not exposed to the language, how are you expected to be proficient in that language? So that is a very good way of getting exposed to any language you wish to uh, communicate proficiently in. So that is how it uh, began for me. And regarding subjects, I like to read English literature. And English literature was quite an influence, like, not, I would say, in the typical sense, but I would Victorian era literature. I often read books of Charles Dickens, and I have to credit my school for that, because they basically gave me books to read every summer vacation, and we had to write summaries of those books as a holiday homework. And I used to look forward to that every vacation. Not a lot of kids are interested in doing that, but like I said, I was a lousy sports person. I did not do that well. I was not the kind of kid who was excited about playing cricket in the evenings. So
So the
that is how
couch
the
habits for
habit.
you is not watching
Yeah,
television, but to pick up a book and read and spend hours reading that.
yeah,
Any
yeah.
any specific book or any author which has left a big impact on you, Chinmay?
My very first, the most profound author which I personally admire in the entirety of English language is a short story writer by the name of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He wrote the famous character Sherlock Holmes, as your listeners may know.
Yes.
The habit of observation is something which tremendously, it was ingrained into my brain. The way Sherlock Holmes observes every single facet of solving his problem, whatever his crime, or even his. There is a very famous story in which Sherlock Holmes deduces the entire, I would say, semi biography of the person just from his hat.
Yes.
So the way it has been outlined into those stories, that left a big impact on me. And that is how I would say the the bug of observation bit me. That there's a very beautiful line spoken by Sherlock Holmes in the book, that my dear Watson, you s- you see but you do not observe. It is something on the lines of you fail to reason from what you see. So that is how I learned that observation is seeing plus reasoning. It's not just looking at something. So that is I have a special soft spot in my heart. And of course there are several other books as well. Lately I've been collecting some natural history books as well, due to since I have a certain affinity towards nature. So right now I'm exploring colonial era literature for birds, because when the British were ruling India, a lot of military and forest officers wrote a lot of detailed journals. So I'm trying to collect some of those, and I've been trying to wonder kind of life, what kind of jungles were there at that point of time, since colonial India was a wealth of natural resources. So that is how it is slowly my subjects are evolving. So as a kid, I used to read fiction, and then of course came a little bit of literature, and then since I am at the end of the day, I work for a living, so I try to read more about economics as well. So that is slowly how a little bit of geopolitics as well, because you need to be an aware citizen. So what is going on in the world? So that is how slowly my tastes are, I would say, evolving. And a little bit of history as well, because history is one of those. It's like a view, the view into, yeah, it's a view into the past, but it is also a view to, I would say, an era in which things happened because of which we are what we are today. So history is also something I have close uh, affinity towards, and so particularly the two eras of history which I like. I'm a huge fan of. I keep exploring any chance I get. Are particularly the world wars in the 20th century and the Roman Empire, basically. So because that is where I feel those two eras are fundamental into shaping what we are today.
So, Chinmay, very interesting you say this, because in many ways, I believe um, politics, economics, uh, and the way it impacts society and the life we live is all connected.
Yeah,
And you said a moment ago that your interest in the subject of geopolitics uh,
yeah.
essentially revolves around asking the question, what kind of world am I living in? Or what kind of world is emerging for me? And especially, Chinmay, you represent a generation. I don't know whether it is the Gen Y or Gen Z or the millennials. You're kind of a mix of all this. In your mid to late 20s, uh, when you look at the world around you, what kind of world do you see in which you now have to build your life?
So I see a tremendous, especially when it comes to the world. I have a lot of hope, because from what I am able to see is that I'm incredibly just being born into the information age, like having access to information and resources, which was not possible even a decade ago,
Yes.
is something which I feel tremendously privileged and grateful about. Um, that, and when I look up to the world, there is, uh, it is obviously there are a lot of things wrong with it, but I am sure that we have the tools and the resources to solve those wrongs. The will is something which I feel that as a say human species, I would say we have to work on. The will is something, because the will is something which is sometimes there, sometimes not there. The will to solve those problems. So that is how the world works, in my opinion.
So nice to hear this voice of hope. Uh, but I guess hope also coexists with anxiety. You can't have
Yeah,
one
sure.
without the other. So if I were to quickly ask you,
Yeah.
what sort of anxiety do you have when you look at the world around you as it is evolving?
I would say a few problems which I feel really bad about is uh, our continuous splendor of nature without any thoughts of uh, what will happen. Uh, I would not say immediately to the next generation, but say a few generations down the line, because we act as if, I mean, as a by we I mean mankind as a species, we tend to act as if we are going to live forever with the natural resources. So that uh, steps up concern. And then, of course, there are problems due to geopolitics, as everyone must be aware. Like in the current context as well, there are a lot of geopolitical problems due to which those actual problems take a backseat, and man-made problems, which are, I would say, built on ego, take precedence over actual problems which need to be solved.
That's
So
right.
that is, yeah. So that is sometimes which makes for a gloom and doom kind of scenario. But I would say there is sufficient amount of good left in this world to overcome that. That is how I tend to feel about the world's problems. I mean, uh, I would say, especially in the context of India, since I'm an Indian citizen, I tend to see a lot on the optimistic side of things, just because I have seen it with my own eyes. So, 10 years ago and now, the difference what I can see, and I can safely say that 10 years later, it will be a much better future for me. That is how I feel.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Chinmay, let me admit something very openly on this podcast platform is, I'm personally in awe of you and your cohort, the generation that you all represent. Uh, and I salute all of you from the bottom of my heart. And I say this with deep humility and respect for all of you, because uh, despite all that is supposedly not right, uh, you know, for probably people in my generation, uh, we probably are more cynics rather than being hopeful. But here is something that I hear from you right now, and I guess we have heard this from many of our guests on this platform, where young Indians like you who are so deeply grounded uh, in who you are and the sense of identity and self that you carry, very uh, clear about where you stand and willing to go the distance to achieve the dream that you have set for yourself, and being brutally honest with the whole affair, and being so realistic about accepting the
Yeah,
world as it is, and
yeah.
carrying the hope, is something which gives me tremendous joy.
It's it's optimistic pragmatism.
Okay, absolutely, absolutely. you know
You're
me
not
and
you
me
are
and
hopeful, but you are not delusional.
yeah, you're not delusional. You are absolutely right. That's why I said you are ruthlessly honest about the world that you are a part of. Me and my generation, grew up with that little line that appears at the end of a beautiful uh, short document called the Desiderata, which nobody knows what are its origin. But the Desiderata is, I think, a text of about 40, 50 lines, no more than that. It ends with a statement that with all its sham, drudgery, and broken dreams, it is still a beautiful world.
Yeah,
And this is what I hear from you just now. And this amazing little story that you have created for yourself of being amidst the world of nature, birds, right from your very early days of childhood in Assam and now in Gujarat and various wetlands that you visit.
Yeah. No, in fact, I would implore all the listeners that for a change, say on a weekend, just go to somewhere away from the city or the town, or maybe if you are, say, close to a rural area, visit a place where there is no internet connectivity, and just take in whatever you can. Just do it for a day. Just do it for a day. Try to do it for a day. I'm not saying just go all guns blazing into the jungles knee deep. No, but just to see what serenity feels like. You come out with a little better version of yourself is what I feel. Every time I go to a trip, I see some birds. I feel a little better, and I basically come an improved version of myself.
Beautiful. So beautifully said. Uh, Chinmay, thank you very much for these beautiful thoughts that you're leaving us with. Wish you good luck.
Yeah,
Take care and
thank you so much.
stay safe. Thank you for your time today, my dear listeners. This is your host, Milind Agnihotri, signing off. Goodbye, take care, and stay safe. This podcast is for general information purposes only and should not be considered as a piece of any professional advice. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of its guest. Creators of this podcast expressly disclaim any and all liability or responsibility for any direct or indirect, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of this podcast. For feedback and suggestions, please write to wingsindia75 at gmail.com. Thank you.